Well, of course, there wasn't much else to do except write, and fortunately, I could still do that.
Willie Nelson.
For a long time, Willie Nelson stayed quiet about certain parts of his journey, even as fans kept guessing and rumors kept swirling. But now, at 91, the Texas-born legend has finally opened up, not about some forgotten song or a wild tale from his early days, but about life itself, the road behind him, and the truth people never stopped wondering about. And today we're taking that journey with him, walking through the stories, the struggles, the triumphs, and the legacy he's built that still echoes across generations. Willie Nelson isn't just a country singer, he's a living story, a voice that reshaped American music with words that feel like poetry and a spirit that never followed anyone else's rules. He rose to national fame in the late 1960s as one of the leaders of what became known as outlaw country, a movement that pushed back against polished industry formulas and gave artists control over their own sound. Songs like On the Road Again, Always on My Mind, and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain became timeless, reaching listeners young and old, while his look, his worn guitar, and his unmistakable voice became symbols of independence. Born on April 29, 1933, in the small town of Abbott, Texas, Willie grew up surrounded by wide skies, cotton fields, and hard times shaped by the Great Depression. His parents separated early, and he and his sister Bobby were raised by their grandparents, who lived simply but believed deeply in music, faith, and hard work. Food was basic, money was tight, but love filled the gaps, and music became Willie's refuge. His grandmother taught him guitar, his sister played piano, and church hymns shaped his earliest melodies. By the time he was 6, he was already writing songs on scraps of paper, and the radio introduced him to voices that would influence him forever. Life wasn't easy. Willie worked long days in the fields, dealt with loss early on, and learned resilience before he fully understood it. Music became his closest companion, a way to say things he couldn't always put into words. As a teenager, he played local venues, balancing school, labor, and music, and by 17, with a guitar on his shoulder, he left Abbott knowing something bigger was calling. After high school, Willie briefly joined the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War era, dreaming of flying, but health issues cut that chapter short, and he returned home to find his place again. He worked as a radio host, played wherever he could, and focused on songwriting, eventually landing in Nashville where his talent quickly stood out. He wrote major hits for other artists, but even with success, he wanted freedom, so in the early 1970s he returned to Texas, and that decision changed everything. That move sparked a creative explosion. Blending country with folk, blues, and jazz, Willie helped define a sound that felt honest and unfiltered. His album, Red-Headed Stranger, became a landmark release, and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain earned him his first major industry award. Over the decades that followed, he continued to explore new sounds, collaborate with legends like Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and Chris Christopherson, and perform for crowds who saw him not just as a singer, but as a symbol of authenticity. Awards followed him everywhere, from major music honors to lifetime achievement recognitions, and his influence stretched far beyond country music. He was honored by cultural institutions, inducted into halls of fame, and celebrated for shaping American songwriting itself. Even in his late 80s and 90s, he continued releasing new music, proving that creativity doesn't have an expiration date. Outside of music, Willie stood up for causes close to his heart, especially supporting family farmers through Farm Aid, an annual event he helped start that has raised tens of millions of dollars to keep rural communities alive. He also wrote books, appeared in films and television shows, and became a familiar, trusted face across American culture. His generosity extended to disaster relief, environmental causes, and community support programs, always using his platform to give back. Like many long careers, his path wasn't free of hardship. In the late 1980s, financial troubles brought intense pressure, but with determination, creativity, and the loyalty of his fans, he worked through it and came out stronger, turning a difficult chapter into another example of resilience. His personal life unfolded quietly alongside the spotlight, filled with relationships, family, and lessons learned over time. Music remained the constant thread, especially his bond with his sister Bobby, who played piano in his band for decades. Their connection went back to childhood, and she became an essential part of his sound and his life until her passing in 2022. Willie often said that playing beside her felt like coming home. Today, Willie Nelson continues to look forward rather than back. In recent interviews, he's shared that he doesn't dwell on the end of the road, focusing instead on feeling good, staying creative, and enjoying every moment he's given. He says he hopes people remember him as someone who showed up, had fun, and played music honestly. Friends say he keeps his mind sharp by trading stories and laughter, proving that age is just a number when curiosity stays alive. Even after health setbacks, he returned to the stage, released new music, and announced the return of his annual 4th of July picnic in Austin, sharing the stage with fellow legends and new voices alike. It's another reminder that Willie Nelson isn't slowing down, he's still doing exactly what he's always done, following his own path. From cotton fields in Texas to global stages, Willie Nelson's story is one of grit, creativity, and heart. He didn't just make music, he built a legacy that continues to inspire, connect, and remind people that staying true to yourself can carry you further than anyone expects. Willie Nelson that very few artists ever experience. Instead of fading into nostalgia, he became even more present, more reflective, and more honest, not just in his music, but in how he spoke about life, aging, and the simple act of still waking up each morning ready to create. While many expected him to slow down quietly, Willie did the opposite. He leaned into the moment, sharing wisdom earned through decades of living on the road, loving deeply, losing people he cared about, and learning that peace doesn't come from fighting time but from walking alongside it. Those close to him say Willie's daily routine is surprisingly grounded. He wakes early, enjoys quiet moments, often with music playing softly in the background, and spends time writing, reading, or just thinking. He believes stillness sharpens creativity, and that the mind, like a muscle, stays strong when used gently but consistently. Even now, songs come to him naturally, sometimes from a phrase overheard, sometimes from memories that resurface unannounced, and sometimes from absolutely nothing at all, just a melody floating in, asking to be shaped. One of the things that surprised fans most when Willie finally opened up was how little fear he carries. Not because life hasn't tested him, but because it has, over and over again. He's spoken about how surviving difficult chapters taught him not to waste energy worrying about things he can't control. To Willie, time isn't an enemy, it's a traveling companion, one that walks beside you whether you like it or not, so you might as well enjoy the scenery. His friendships have played a huge role in keeping that outlook alive. Willie has always surrounded himself with people who challenge him creatively and mentally. Over the years, he's shared long conversations with fellow artists about songwriting, history, and the strange twists life takes when you least expect them. These conversations, according to those around him, are full of laughter, storytelling, and reflection, less about the past and more about what still lies ahead. Even now, Willie sees music as a living thing, something that changes as the person creating it changes. That's why his later albums feel different, not weaker, not slower, just deeper. There's less urgency to prove anything and more desire to express truth. His voice, weathered by time, carries an honesty that younger voices can't fake, and fans feel that instantly. It's why new generations keep discovering him, not because of trends, but because truth never goes out of style. When asked what keeps him going, Willie doesn't talk about awards or numbers or charts. He talks about connection. He talks about the moment when a song reaches someone who didn't even know they needed it. He believes music is a shared experience, not a performance, and that belief has guided him from the beginning. Whether he's playing for thousands or strumming alone, the intention is always the same, to be real. His relationship with his family remains central to his life. He takes pride in watching his children and grandchildren find their own voices, not trying to mold them into copies of himself, but encouraging them to follow what feels right. Music often brings them together, but so do simple things like shared meals, quiet conversations, and time spent outdoors. Willie believes success means little if you don't have people to share it with. Despite his legendary status, Willie remains surprisingly humble. He rarely speaks of himself as an icon. In his mind, he's still that kid from a small Texas town who picked up a guitar because it felt natural. That grounding has kept him approachable, even as his influence has grown. Fans who meet him often say the same thing: he listens more than he talks, and when he speaks, it's never rushed. Another thing that came as a surprise when Willie finally spoke candidly was how much joy he still finds in the present. He doesn't dwell on regrets, and he doesn't romanticize the past. He appreciates it, learns from it, but doesn't live there. To him, the best moments are the ones happening now, the next song, the next show, the next conversation. That mindset has become part of his legacy just as much as his music. His creative process hasn't changed much over the years. He still believes songs should feel natural, not forced. If something isn't working, he lets it go and comes back later. He trusts instinct over perfection and emotion over polish. That approach has allowed him to remain productive long after many others stop creating altogether. Willie has also become more vocal about the importance of kindness. He believes the world could use more listening and less arguing, more understanding and less judgment. Through his actions and words, he's encouraged people to care about one another, to support communities, and to remember that everyone is carrying something unseen. When reflecting on his career, Willie doesn't measure it by longevity but by moments. Moments on stage when the crowd sings along, moments backstage when young artists nervously introduce themselves, moments at home when a song finally feels finished. Those are the things that matter to him, not headlines or rankings. Even as his pace naturally changes with age, his curiosity hasn't faded. He remains interested in new music, new ideas, and new perspectives. He believes staying curious is the secret to staying alive in every sense of the word. That curiosity keeps him writing, performing, and engaging with the world rather than retreating from it. The truth Willie eventually shared, the one fans had been guessing about for years, wasn't shocking or dramatic. It was simple and deeply human. He admitted that the reason he keeps going isn't because he's chasing something, but because he enjoys the act itself. Music isn't a job to him, it's a way of being. He doesn't perform to escape life, he performs to be fully inside it. That honesty resonated deeply with people. In a world obsessed with youth and speed, Willie stands as proof that meaning deepens with time. His story reassures listeners that it's never too late to create, to change, or to live fully on your own terms. As he continues to release music and step onto stages, Willie Nelson isn't trying to outrun time. He's walking with it, guitar in hand, smile on his face, still curious, still grateful, still telling stories worth hearing. And maybe that's the real reason his voice still matters so much today, because it carries not just songs, but a lifetime of understanding, shared freely with anyone willing to listen. If there's one lesson Willie leaves behind, it's this: life doesn't need to be perfect to be meaningful, it just needs to be honest. And as long as he's here, he's going to keep singing that truth, one song at a time. If you've stayed with this story until now, you're part of that journey too, so let us know what Willie Nelson's life and music mean to you, share your thoughts below, and don't forget to support the channel for more stories like this, because some legends don't just fade away, they keep teaching us how to live. Willie Nelson's presence has taken on something close to a quiet gravity, not loud or demanding, but steady, calm, and deeply reassuring, the kind that makes people lean in rather than scroll away. There's a sense that when Willie speaks now, he's not trying to teach or impress anyone, he's simply sharing what time has taught him, and that honesty carries more weight than any polished statement ever could. People listen because they feel he's earned the right to speak slowly, thoughtfully, and without urgency. One of the most remarkable things about Willie in his later years is how clearly he understands himself. He no longer feels pressure to explain his choices or justify his past. He accepts that life is made up of turns you understand only after you've already taken them. He often says that clarity doesn't come from planning every step, it comes from paying attention while you're walking. That idea runs through his music, his interviews, and even the way he carries himself now, relaxed but present, grounded but curious. Those who spend time around him notice how much he values silence. Not empty silence, but meaningful quiet, the kind that allows thoughts to settle. Willie believes that silence is just as important as sound, especially for someone who has spent a lifetime surrounded by music. He often sits with a guitar without playing it, letting ideas come and go, trusting that what's meant to stay will stay. That patience is part of why his work continues to feel sincere rather than forced. Willie's influence on younger artists has grown even stronger with time. Many musicians who never met him personally still feel guided by his example. They talk about how his career proves that success doesn't require following trends or pleasing everyone. It requires knowing who you are and being brave enough to stay that way even when the world pushes back. Willie never tried to fit neatly into any box, and in doing so, he showed others that boxes were never meant to hold creativity in the first place. He's also become a symbol of endurance, not the kind rooted in stubbornness, but the kind built on adaptability. Willie understands that survival isn't about resisting change, it's about learning how to move with it. That mindset has allowed him to remain relevant without chasing relevance. He doesn't adjust his voice to sound younger, and he doesn't rewrite his past to fit modern expectations. Instead, he allows each stage of life to leave its mark on his work. One thing fans often notice is how present Willie remains during live performances. Even now, he doesn't treat shows as routine. Every performance is approached as its own moment, its own conversation with the audience. He listens as much as he sings, feeding off the energy in the room. That mutual exchange creates something rare, a sense that everyone there is sharing the same moment rather than watching one unfold from a distance. Away from the stage, Willie's life has become simpler, more intentional. He values comfort over luxury, peace over noise. His home reflects that balance: open spaces, natural surroundings, and room to breathe. He enjoys being outdoors, watching the land change with the seasons, reminding him that everything moves in cycles. That awareness keeps him grounded, especially after decades spent traveling and performing. Willie has spoken openly about how important routine has become, not because he's afraid of unpredictability, but because routine creates space for creativity. By removing unnecessary decisions from daily life, he saves his energy for the things that matter most: writing, playing, thinking, and connecting. He believes discipline doesn't limit freedom, it protects it. Despite his legendary status, Willie remains deeply approachable. He treats everyone with the same respect, whether they're longtime collaborators or someone meeting him for the first time. That openness has built loyalty that spans generations. Fans don't just admire his talent, they trust him. They feel seen by his songs, understood by his words, and welcomed by his presence. Another layer of Willie's legacy lies in how he's reframed aging itself. In a culture that often treats growing older as something to hide or fight against, Willie embodies a different message. He shows that age can bring clarity, humor, and freedom. He's comfortable laughing at himself, acknowledging his limits, and celebrating what remains. That perspective has resonated deeply with people who see in him a reflection of what aging can look like when it's met with acceptance rather than fear. He often talks about gratitude, not in a grand or dramatic way, but as a daily practice. Gratitude for waking up, for being able to play, for still feeling curious. He believes gratitude keeps the heart open and the mind flexible. Without it, even success can feel empty. With it, even quiet moments become meaningful. Willie's songwriting in recent years reflects this mindset. The themes are less about longing and more about understanding, less about searching and more about appreciating. There's a calm confidence in his lyrics now, a sense of someone who has made peace with uncertainty. That emotional honesty is why his newer work continues to resonate, not as nostalgia, but as lived experience shared openly. He's also become more reflective about how he wants to be remembered. Not in terms of fame or records, but in terms of impact. He hopes people remember him as someone who stayed true, who cared about others, and who used his voice to lift rather than divide. He believes legacy isn't built through perfection, but through consistency of values. What truly surprised many fans when Willie spoke more openly in recent years was how content he is. Not complacent, not detached, but genuinely at ease. He doesn't feel like he's missing anything. He feels like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. That sense of peace didn't come easily, it was earned through experience, mistakes, growth, and reflection. He often says that if he could give advice to his younger self, it wouldn't be about avoiding mistakes. It would be about trusting the process. He believes every chapter, even the difficult ones, contributed to the person he became. Removing any part of that journey would change the whole story. As Willie continues to create and perform, there's a growing sense that he represents something rare in modern culture, a reminder that longevity can be meaningful when it's rooted in purpose. He hasn't stretched his career for attention, he's simply continued doing what he loves because it still brings him joy. That authenticity is impossible to fake, and audiences feel it instantly. In the end, Willie Nelson's greatest contribution may not be a single song or album, but the example he sets by living openly, creatively, and honestly for as long as he has. He shows that a life well lived isn't defined by how loudly it's celebrated, but by how deeply it's felt. As long as Willie is here, guitar in hand, voice steady, eyes curious, he continues to remind us that creativity doesn't belong to youth, meaning doesn't fade with time, and staying true to yourself is the longest road worth traveling. If this story has stayed with you, take a moment to reflect on what it means to keep showing up, to keep creating, and to keep listening, because legends like Willie Nelson don't just leave behind music, they leave behind a way of seeing the world, and that may be the most valuable gift of all.